It was 2 in the morning when my entire world collapsed. Through the thin walls of my son's house, I overheard Victoria, my daughter-in-law, speaking on the phone. Her words froze my blood. "We'll take her to the nursing home tomorrow. Everything is arranged." In that instant, I realized I wasn't family anymore. I was a burden. My heart pounded as I clutched my purse, the only thing I could carry. Quietly, I pushed open the back door and stepped into the night. The cool air brushed against my skin like freedom itself. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would never let anyone decide my fate again. My name is Margaret. I am 70 years old, and for the past 5 years, I have lived under the roof of my son Daniel and his wife Victoria. At first, I believed it was a blessing. Daniel welcomed me with open arms after my husband passed away, insisting, "You shouldn't be alone, Mom. We're your family." I sold my small condo, thinking I was joining a home filled with love. For a while it seemed true. Victoria greeted me with smiles, Daniel treated me with kindness, and I felt useful again, helping with the cooking, the cleaning, the quiet rhythm of family life. But slowly, everything changed. The warmth faded. Smiles grew thinner. Victoria's words turned sharp, her tone heavy with hidden venom. "Maybe you should eat a little less, Margaret. Don't you think you should stay in your room when guests come over? The house looks tidier that way." Daniel, instead of protecting me, only nodded in agreement. "Mom, Victoria is right. You need rest." That word, rest, soon became their favorite way of telling me I was no longer welcome. I endured countless humiliations. Sometimes I ate alone, staring at an empty plate, while they enjoyed dinner together. Sometimes I overheard whispers behind closed doors, about how slow I had become, about options they might consider. Every word pierced my heart. Still, I clung to hope, convincing myself that it was just a phase. That love would return. That family would mean protection. But what I didn't know, what they never suspected, was that I had my own secrets. Hidden resources. Financial independence carefully guarded like an ace up my sleeve. And then, that August night, I heard the truth. Victoria's hushed voice through the phone, arranging my fate as if I were nothing more than an unwanted object. "Tomorrow we'll take her to the nursing home. She won't know a thing. Once she's there, convincing her to stay will be easy." My knees trembled. My hands shook. The betrayal was deeper than anything I had ever imagined. In that moment, I understood that my role in their lives was not that of a mother, not even a grandmother to their future children, but a burden they were desperate to discard. But here is the twist they never saw coming. The woman they believed to be powerless, poor, and dependent was about to rise stronger than ever. They thought they could silence me. They thought they could control me. They were wrong. When my husband died, my world lost its anchor. For the first time in 50 years, I was alone. The silence in my small condo was unbearable. Every corner reminded me of his laughter, his warmth, his voice reading the newspaper in the morning. I told myself I was strong, but grief has a way of breaking even the strongest heart. That's when Daniel came to me. My only son, though not by blood, but by adoption. Tears filled his eyes as he hugged me tightly. "You can't stay here, Mom. I'm all you have. Come live with me. With us. You'll never be alone again." His words pierced through the emptiness, and I believed him. I wanted to believe him. So I sold my condo, the little nest my husband and I had built, and moved into their home. I thought it was the beginning of a new chapter filled with love and comfort. At first, it felt like it. Victoria smiled every time she saw me. Daniel would bring me tea after dinner, asking how I felt. I busied myself with small chores, helping them like any mother would. Cooking soup, folding laundry, mending Daniel's shirts. For a while, I thought I belonged. But slowly, things shifted. Victoria's smiles hardened into smirks. Her voice, once sweet, carried a sharp edge. "Margaret, don't you think you've already had enough to eat? Or, maybe you should rest upstairs when we have company." Daniel, my Daniel, stood silent. "Sometimes worse," he agreed with her. "Mom, Victoria is right. You need more rest." Rest. That word again. Rest meant disappear. Rest meant don't embarrass us. Rest meant we don't want you here. The house grew colder for me. I would sit alone in my room while laughter floated up from the living room. I would eat a dry piece of bread in silence while they dined together on hot meals. And yet, I stayed. Because I told myself family was worth enduring. Because I thought my love for them would eventually be returned. Because I was too afraid to face the truth. I was no longer a mother in their eyes. I was a burden. One night, as I scrubbed the last dishes in the quiet kitchen, I heard muffled voices through the wall. Victoria's voice, sharp and impatient. "You can't keep this up forever. She's too much of a burden." Daniel's voice, low but weak. "I know, but she's my mother." "Exactly. She's your mother, not mine. I didn't marry you to become a nurse for the elderly." The plate nearly slipped from my trembling hands. A nurse. That's what she called me. A burden to be carried, not family to be loved. From that night on, the silence in the house grew louder. Victoria stopped cooking for me. If I wanted to eat, I had to cook my own meals. Daniel barely looked at me. Sometimes, when I tried to speak, Victoria would simply walk past me as if I didn't exist. And then came the night that changed everything. It was late, 2 in the morning. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, when I heard footsteps in the kitchen. Slowly, I rose and crept toward the door. Through the crack, I saw her, Victoria, speaking softly on the phone. Her words pierced through me like knives. "Yes, I've spoken with the director. She can move in tomorrow. Daniel agrees. We'll just tell her it's a visit. Once she's inside, it'll be easier to convince her to stay." A pause. A laugh. "Do I feel guilty? Please. We've tolerated her for 5 years. It's time she lives where she belongs." My knees nearly gave way. The nursing home. They were planning to commit me there, without telling me, without giving me a choice. In that moment I understood. If I stayed, by morning, my life as I knew it would be over. I would be discarded like an old piece of furniture. So I acted. Silently, I packed my purse, documents, some cash, my phone. My hands shook, but my heart was steady. When Victoria finally went upstairs, I tiptoed through the dark hallways of the house I had once called home. At the back door I paused, took one deep breath, and stepped out into the night. The air was cool, the sky dark, but I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for certain. I would never be anyone's victim again. By the time the first rays of dawn lit the city, I was already far from the house I had once called home. I had wandered the streets for an hour before hailing a cab. The driver glanced at me curiously, a woman in her nightclothes, clutching a purse at 3 in the morning. But I lifted my chin and gave him the address of the most elegant hotel in town. If they wanted to treat me like a discarded old woman, then it was time to remind them exactly who I was. At the hotel reception, the clerk raised an eyebrow when I requested the presidential suite. But my credit card spoke for me. Within minutes, I was seated on a bed that cost more per night than Daniel earned in a week. For the first time in years, I smiled. At 6 o'clock, the phone began ringing. Daniel's number lit up the screen. Again and again. Then texts. "Mom, where are you? We're worried. Please answer." Worried. The irony nearly made me laugh. By 8, Victoria's calls came too. Her voice on voicemail was frantic, almost hysterical. "Margaret, please come back. We don't know what happened. Daniel is desperate." Desperate, not because they missed me, but because their plan had failed. As I enjoyed breakfast on the hotel terrace, eggs Benedict, smoked salmon, Colombian coffee, I imagined them tearing the house apart, searching every room, calling hospitals, maybe even the police. Let them taste the anguish they had forced on me. But I wasn't wasting time. I had calls to make. The first, to my bank. The numbers startled even me. My investments had grown more than expected. The second, to Benjamin Carter, the best family lawyer in the city, who had once managed my late husband's will. The third, to Lauren, my old friend and real estate agent, the one who years ago had shown me a downtown property perfect for, if I ever wanted to live on my own again. As the phone buzzed endlessly with Daniel's calls, I felt something ignite inside me. For 5 years, I had lived as if I were powerless, invisible. But the truth was different. I had money. I had resources. I had allies. And most importantly, I had the truth. That morning, as I stood in the mirror wearing my pearl gray suit and elegant shoes, I realized something I hadn't felt in years. I was not the victim anymore. I was the storm that was coming for them. At 4 in the afternoon, I arrived at Benjamin Carter's office on the 25th floor of a skyscraper. The city stretched beneath us like a chessboard, and I was ready to play. Benjamin listened carefully as I recounted everything. Victoria's midnight call, their plan to send me away like a forgotten object, my escape into the night. His expression grew darker with every word. Margaret, this is serious. What they intended could be considered elder abuse. You have every right to fight back. Then he leaned forward, his eyes sharp. Do they know about your real financial situation? No, I replied. Daniel believes I'm a poor widow living off his charity. Benjamin smiled for the first time. Then we have the upper hand. He laid out the possibilities: restraining orders, lawsuits for emotional abuse, even criminal charges. But then, his voice lowered. What if, instead of just protecting yourself, we teach them a lesson they will never forget? That was the moment I decided. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to expose them, publicly, legally, and irrevocably. While Daniel and Victoria's messages shifted from fake concern to veiled threats, I prepared for war. With Lauren's help, I signed a lease for a penthouse in the city's most exclusive district. 2 years, paid in advance. I shopped for a new wardrobe, emerald suits, violet dresses, gold jewelry. Gone were the dull clothes of a poor widow. Every mirror I looked into no longer reflected a victim. It reflected power. Meanwhile, Benjamin's investigations revealed something that made my blood boil. Daniel and Victoria had been living on lies. Tax fraud, false medical deductions, even a blog Victoria had written called Living with Margaret, where she fabricated stories about my so-called dementia to earn donations and sponsorships. They weren't just planning to discard me. They had been profiting off me for years. The rage inside me turned into fuel. I wasn't going to hide anymore. I was going to stand on a stage, in front of everyone who mattered in this city, and show the world who I truly was, while tearing apart the lies they had built. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers. Businessmen in tailored suits, women in elegant gowns, and the city's financial elite filled the hall. They believed they were there to see luxury properties. Instead, they were about to witness something far more unforgettable. Lauren stepped onto the stage first, her voice smooth and confident. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we present exclusive investment opportunities. But before we begin, I want to introduce a remarkable woman. A visionary investor who has decided to expand her portfolio. Please welcome Mrs. Margaret Vance. Applause echoed as I walked across the stage in my emerald suit, high heels clicking against the polished floor. From the corner of my eye, I saw them, Daniel and Victoria, faces frozen, eyes wide with disbelief. At first, confusion, then recognition, and finally, horror. I began slowly, my voice steady but filled with fire. For 5 years, I lived in my son's house, believing I was part of a family. What I didn't know was that behind my back, I was considered a burden, something to be hidden, silenced, discarded. The room fell silent. Guests shifted uneasily, sensing the weight of the confession. 2 weeks ago, I overheard my daughter-in-law arranging my fate over the phone. We'll take her to the nursing home tomorrow. It's all arranged. Those were her exact words. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Eyes turned toward Daniel and Victoria, whose faces had drained of color. I lifted my chin. But they underestimated me. The woman they thought they could throw away is not helpless. I am an investor, I am independent, and I refuse to be anyone's victim. Benjamin stepped forward, holding a portfolio. I revealed the truth. The 3 properties I had purchased that night, worth over $2 million in cash. Gasps filled the room. Then, the final blow. And one more thing, I said, turning directly to them. The house you've been living in all these years is legally mine. My late husband placed it in trust under my name. You never bothered to read the documents. You lived in my home, planning to cast me out of it. The crowd erupted. Some guests shook their heads in disgust. Others discreetly raised their phones, recording every second. Daniel's lips trembled. Mom, please not here. Victoria's voice cracked. Margaret, you're humiliating us. I looked at them with calm, icy resolve. You humiliated me for 5 years. Tonight, the truth belongs not just to me, but to everyone. And as the applause thundered, cameras flashing, I stepped down from the stage, not as a discarded widow, but as a woman who had reclaimed her power. The days after the event unfolded like a storm. Videos of my speech spread across social media. Strangers who had never heard my name now spoke of me as the grandmother who stood up. Journalists filled my inbox, begging for interviews. But the spotlight wasn't on me alone. It scorched Daniel and Victoria. They tried to control the narrative. Victoria created an Instagram account, her tearful face staring into the camera. People don't understand. We only wanted what was best for Margaret. Modern nursing homes are beautiful places. The comments tore her apart. You didn't ask her at 2 a.m. That's not love, it's abuse. If you cared, you would have known she wasn't poor. You humiliated her, and now you want sympathy? Daniel chose another path. Silence, desperation. He called me day after day, his voice breaking. Mom, please, this is getting out of control. People insult us in the street. We lost our jobs. Victoria was fired. I was forced to resign. We don't have money for rent. Please, help us. Help. The same son who ignored my empty plate now begged for my hand. But I had learned. Kindness does not mean self-destruction. Family does not excuse betrayal. Instead, I used my voice to help others. I founded the Margaret Vance Foundation for the protection of seniors. Within months, we had assisted over 200 elderly people facing neglect, abuse, or financial exploitation. We created a helpline, free legal services, and financial education programs. And as my story spread, laws began to change. New protections were passed, making it harder for families to commit elders without consent. Stronger penalties were placed on financial abuse. Meanwhile, Daniel and Victoria's world collapsed. Investigations uncovered their fraudulent tax claims, the fabricated blog, the donations stolen in my name. The courts sentenced them, Daniel to 2 years in prison, Victoria to 3.5. Their reputations shattered, their lives reduced to the consequences of their own greed. I, on the other hand, rediscovered myself. I traveled to places I once only dreamed of. I took salsa lessons at 71. I painted, I laughed, I lived. One evening, as I stood on the terrace of my penthouse, city lights glittering below, I raised a glass of red wine. I wasn't just celebrating freedom. I was celebrating survival. I had been invisible for too long, but now, I was unshakable. When I look back now, I realize something important. The greatest mistake I made was not moving into Daniel's house. It was allowing myself to believe that being a burden was better than being alone. For 5 years, I let myself fade into silence. I accepted crumbs of affection, hoping love would return. But love without respect is not love. It is control. I don't regret adopting Daniel when he was a child. I only regret not understanding sooner that kindness must never come at the cost of self-destruction. Today, I live freely. I live with dignity. I live for myself. And every day, I hear from people around the world who share their stories. Women and men who, after years of humiliation, finally found the courage to stand tall. To anyone watching this, to anyone who feels invisible in their own family, to anyone who has been told they are a burden, remember this. It is never too late to reclaim your life. It is never too late to demand respect. And it is never too late to live on your own terms. Because the best revenge is not anger. It is living well. So if my story has touched you, share it. Tell it to someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you are never powerless.